Welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and today is a special day. It's March 20th, 2013, which is the spring equinox, episode 43 of Walk in the Park. You can see all our episodes at walkinpark.com, and I invite you to do that. We have a lot of different shows. So anyway, I looked out my window this morning and I saw this. Actually this afternoon, and that doesn't really look like spring, does it? So I'm just going to say it's the equinox. So what is the equinox? Well, let's take a look at this diagram I swiped off the internet, showing a stylized out of scale diagram of the Earth going around the sun. The Earth has a significant tilt to it, as we all know. And during the winter, over on the right, that Earth is tilted in its orbit away from the sun, so the southern hemisphere gets more sun, the northern hemisphere gets summer, our winter, and our days are short and the light is low on the horizon. But now we've come around up to the top. The Earth is still tilted, but it's not tilted towards the sun or away from it. It's sort of tilted in sort of a tangent to the Earth's actually elliptical orbit, which is not really shown here. It shows a circle. So that means that the entire planet gets equinox, or equal day, equal night in Latin. Actually equal night. I don't know what happened to the day, but anyway, it's roughly 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. And so we're now heading into the period when our days are longer than nights, and days are longer than nights, and days get longer until we get around to the summer solstice, which is about June 21st or so. Well, today, probably down in Mexico, they are celebrating the equinox, as they do each year, the spring equinox and also the fall equinox. Same thing happens in the fall. The days are equal length, except we're heading towards winter instead of summer. And the Mayans, at a famous archaeological site called Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, the Mayans, and actually probably the Toltecs who conquered the Mayans at some point, built this amazing temple called the Temple of Kukulkan, or El Castillo, the Mexican Spaniards call it. But in any case, it is arranged very mathematically and astronomically, such that on this date today, the sun, as it's in the afternoon, it is illuminating the right-hand or south side of the temple, and the north side is in the shade completely, and the edge between the north and south sides that you see pointing straight at us is in steps. You can look on the left side, all the way on the left side, and you can see that the corner of the temple descends in steps, and that creates a shadow on the steps going up the middle of the left-hand face of the pyramid, and you see this sort of scalloped light coming through there, or scalloped shadow, and that is supposed to represent a serpent descending, which it actually does, I guess, through the course of the day. I think I actually saw this once. From the top of the temple going all the way down to the bottom, and what's not visible in the picture is a big stone serpent's head, which represents this god Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl, descending to the earth, I guess. So anyway, it's a big event. A lot of people come there to see that on the spring equinox, and actually it happens in other days as well, mathematically, astronomically spaced around those events, and not exactly the same set of shadows. But in any case, it's a big event, and all these people go down there and ascribe all kinds of sort of New Age type interpretations to it. I think it's just basically a mystery of the Mayans, that they certainly were good astronomers and had a very accurate calendar at the time that these big monuments were built. So we're going to go actually to look at the summer solstice, something I did on the summer solstice, which is around June 21st or so. I took a trip to Virginia and North Carolina on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I'm going to show you some of that trip that I took last summer. And one of the reasons I went then is because of the long length of the day. That's when the day is the maximum length in the northern hemisphere, and that I was camping, so it's nice to have light in the evening and not have to go to bed at 7 o'clock like you might this time of year. So we're going to go take a look at that story. And let me just get back to this temple picture here, and we'll bring that up on the video player here. Let's see. Driving down here, US 15, just about 25 miles north of Williamsport, PA, in the rain. Duncannon, Pennsylvania, on the banks of the Susquehanna River, just north of Harrisburg. So I've been following the Susquehanna River ever since Williamsport, which was some time ago, going through all these small towns, lots of rain, hardly saw it. But Duncannon is meaningful to people, at least in the old days that used to walk the Appalachian Trail. It's the place where the Appalachian Trail crosses the Susquehanna River, coming down from one of the ridges on the west shore of the river and then climbing up a ridge on the east shore. I don't know exactly where out here, perhaps that one right there. I never made it this far on my Appalachian Trail trip from Georgia going north. Just stopped just as I got into southern Pennsylvania. But Duncannon was always this sort of famous landmark, halfway point, I guess it would be, on the Appalachian Trail journey. Second day of my journey, Wednesday, June 13th, 2012. I'm finally getting down to the Blue Ridge Mountains, about an hour away from Shannon Farm, which is where I'll be staying for the next 2 nights, where I used to live. But behind me is Massanutten Mountain, or Kennedy Peak, the Shenandoah Mountains, and off beyond them, actually out of the picture here, is the Blue Ridge in Shenandoah National Park. So my adventure is well underway. So here I am at Shannon Farm Community, which is still going. I joined it back in 1975 and was here until about 1978. Then I returned to Ithaca, New York, which has been my home since then, and was before. But it's a beautiful place. I'm always drawn back, come back here and see friends and just be on this beautiful land in the Blue Ridge Mountains, just at the foot of Humpback Mountain back there, which is about 3,600 feet in elevation, about 3,000 feet higher than the valley here. And it's just a lovely place. And I'm going to begin my journey on the Blue Ridge Parkway up there, because actually over to the right, probably out of view here, is Rockfish Gap, and that separates the section of the Blue Ridge that has the Shenandoah National Park to the north and Skyline Drive, and then the Blue Ridge Parkway, which goes along behind Humpback Mountain and all down this ridge all the way down into North Carolina to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So tomorrow I will go up on the Blue Ridge Parkway and begin my journey south at a leisurely pace. So much of the day I have been driving the northern portion of the Blue Ridge Parkway. I started out at Rockfish Gap up just west of Charlottesville near Shannon Farm, where I've been staying the last couple of days, and came south on the Blue Ridge Parkway past Humpback Rocks and many other sites, and stopped at a number of overlooks and beautiful places, and started to get into a meditative state of mind. Well, I'm standing just above the James River, the lowest point on the Blue Ridge Parkway. There's a bridge near here. And this is the James River Water Gap, and it's where the river cuts from the other side of the Blue Ridge Mountains into the Great Valley, I guess, of Virginia, through the mountains, and then continues on to Lynchburg, Richmond, and eventually down to the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay and Hampton Roads, and where Jamestown was settled, and a lot of our early nation's history. So it's a pretty interesting place. I myself was born down in Norfolk and lived in Hampton, so at the mouth of the James River in Hampton Roads, that's where I grew up as a little kid, so here's the other end of it. And in 1971, I walked through here, of course, with Mary, my first wife, and we crossed the James River here, and this is one of the low points. I had to climb high up to the mountains again on either side. So this is kind of a neat place, and there was a canal that went through here. It was the Kanawha Canal, I think it was called. And it was meant eventually to hook up with the Ohio River, but it never did. but it did connect the beyond the mountains, the area beyond the mountains, with the rest of Virginia, and it was an important canal for a number of years. And Union troops destroyed much of it during some 90 miles of it or so during the Civil War. And then later in the 1800s, it was pretty much driven out of business by the railroads, which actually bought the canal and used the towpath that for their railroad bed. So actually, I think there's a railroad maybe coming through here now. It sounds like it. I don't know. I hear something over there. It sounds like a railroad. Yes, it is a train. I can hear the tracks. Yes, a wonderful trip so far. I'm heading to Peaks of Otter tonight, which is a place I've always wanted to go to. Even though I lived down here for some years, I never made it to Peaks of Otter. So I've been at Peaks of Otter, the campground here, for 2 nights so far. I'll be here for a third, 2 full days. And the first day I thought I was going to go up the mountain, but I had too many practical things to take care of. I had to go into town and get some things, and that took quite a lot of time, and they ended up doing my plan B, which was to go to the Natural Bridge of Virginia. And I drove off the mountain to the west down this windy, tortuous road down to the valley and went to Natural Bridge, and it's something I'd always wanted to see, and knew that it was a long time historic natural landmark. Probably is a national natural landmark, and even owned for a while by Thomas Jefferson until after he died, and then it was sold as part of his estate, I understand. But in any case, it's an amazing limestone bridge. It's really a resistant part of the roof of a collapsed limestone cavern, because the valley west of the Blue Ridge has lots of layers of limestone, I think of Ordovician age actually, and that's dissolved out by underground streams, and limestone is dissolved by acid. So if there's some humic acid or other source of acidic water, it can actually dissolve out limestone layers deep under earth and, of course, create limestone caverns. And in this case, most of the cavern roof is long since collapsed, but this one resistant section of limestone persisted, creating this amazing arch. The sort of thing you don't see in the east much at all. I can't think of another example of it, though there possibly is. And you go out west and you see the sandstone arches etched mostly by mostly by wind, and with sand as an abrasive. And of course, here was water in solution. So we went there, and although there's a lot of tourist junk development around it, there's a zoo and a wax museum and all these other things they're trying to get your attention with. But the actual glen or gorge itself of Cedar Creek that formed the natural bridge is in good shape, and it's a nice little trail through it, and it's very civilized. People get a little shuttle bus down to the beginning of the natural bridge itself, or you can walk down, and even have a model of a Monacan Indian village, and there were 3 interpreters in there talking about various aspects of life in the 17th century or so. Monacan Indians, which are the largest group, at least of extant group of Native American people in the state of Virginia. Today, Sunday, the 17th of June, I got myself together and I hiked up the Sharp Top, which is one of the peaks of Otter. And it's quite a steep climb. I must have climbed some 1,500 feet in a mile and a half, and it took an hour and a half or more, which actually took me a little bit more than that. And there's a lot of rocky places. They've made turn rocks so they act like steps a lot. So it's a little more civilized than wilderness, but it is still a steep, challenging trail. And you get up to the top, and there are these enormous boulders that have been eroded
and split apart along joints and stuff, I suppose. In any case, they're exposed in the top of the mountain, and it makes a spectacular setting. It's a very small summit, as Appalachian summits go, and it drops off more than 3,000 feet down to the Piedmont, down to the foot of the mountains to the east. And you can look down to the little lake of Peaks of Otter resort. It used to be a private resort, and then I think it was something like 1936, the Blue Ridge Parkway took it over. There's a lodge there, a restaurant. It's very nice. Nothing extravagant, nice. So I've been in a campground, and that's been pretty minimal. Looking forward someday to a hot shower. But the Peaks of Otter really are special. I actually decided it was as good as Whiteface Mountain in the Adirondacks, which is rises about 3,000 feet from Lake Placid itself, and there's a road up that, of course, and you can also hike up it, which I did when I was like 18. And this house also has a road, has a shuttle bus that goes up until about a quarter mile from the top. And then there's a little loop trail around the summit. So I hiked up it and I took the shuttle bus down. And it was lovely.
Okay. Just wanted to see if there's a little more there. So, yeah, that was a great trip. That's just part one to Peaks of Otter. And then I'll have another part of my story later, another episode, and we'll go farther south. I go all the way down into North Carolina to Mount Mitchell, which is the highest point, the highest mountain in the eastern United States. So one thing I didn't show you is my hat that I'm wearing today is the Blue Ridge Parkway baseball cap I bought on the Blue Ridge Parkway. So one thing I didn't mention is that the natural bridge is 215 feet high to its bottom, and that's exactly the same height as Teganic Falls. So if you want to have a sense of how high Natural Bridge is, just look at Teganic Falls. That's how high the bottom of the bridge is. So that's a pretty substantial height there for that stone bridge. And actually, I think it's US 11 actually goes over the top of that bridge. And when you drive over it, you have no idea that you were going over the Natural Bridge of Virginia. That is a national landmark. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about our spring. Well, sometimes, some days it's thawed and the snow has melted, and we can get down in our gorges and look at that. We find that trails are closed. Why can't we go on those trails? Well, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but first I want to show you a video, another short video this time, about the thaw we had last week on March 12th, where we had snow and rain and so forth, and we got quite a bit of flow of water. So we're going to go there. Just to cover this up for a second here, and we'll go to our next video. Oops. Wait a minute here. Let's see. Okay, so it's beautiful. You can get some great flow this time of year. This isn't the biggest flood that Buttermilk ever had. I wouldn't call it a flood, really, just high water. But the trails are still closed. And why is that? Well, even though we get thaws and so forth, there's still a lot of ice in the gorges. And this is very treacherous. Look at these are all sections of trail that are covered with ice. And you don't want to go in there, because even though it might be warm, it might be a 70-degree day or something this spring, if the gorges haven't thawed out, you're going to have a lot of ice on the trails, and makes it very treacherous. Look at that. That's all trail through there, wandering through the upper section of Buttermilk Glen. They're covered with ice. So recommend you wait. And there are other reasons too, like falling rock. And maybe we'll have a chance this spring to show you them scaling. But in April, they typically climb the cliffs. We'll send rappel scalers, they call them, rappel down the cliffs and knock off the winter loosened rock, which can fall on your head and cause great problems. And if you should go in the gorge and slip on the ice, particularly at a time like say the high water times like we showed there, you might share the fate of William Chapin, who was a seasonal park patrolman who tried to save a Cornell student stuck on the ice back in 1986. And he lost his life doing it by slipping into the stream himself. So don't go in our gorges until they're ready to be opened. And in the meantime, we are waiting for spring. And I want to thank you all for joining us today on Walk in the Park. And we'll see you again next week. And have a good week. Happy spring.